It's 8 o'clock, you're watching the UK Tonight. Coming up, a woman kept a vulnerable victim as a slave for 25 years is jailed. Mandy Wixon knocked out the victim's teeth, splashed bleach on her face and forced her to live off scraps of food. Wixon was sent to prison today for 13 years. Also tonight, the Conservatives call for an investigation into the Mandelson files. Sir Keir Starmer repeating his apology for Peter Mandelson's appointment as US ambassador today. The opposition say the Prime Minister has given misleading statements to the Commons. Plus, reports a 60-year-old tourist from the UK has been charged with breaking Dubai's cybercrime laws after allegedly filming Iranian missile strikes. And I'll be speaking to DJ Pete Tong about his struggles with hearing loss. All that to come and much more on the UK Tonight. But first tonight, the US Treasury Secretary has been telling Sky News an international coalition could be formed to escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz as the war with Iran rages on. The comments from Scott Bessent are perhaps the clearest indication yet of the Trump administration's strategy to protect shipping. Speaking to my colleague, Wilfred Frost, Mr Bessent said that vessels could be escorted through the strait as soon as militarily possible. Well, Wilf joins me now from Washington, where you've not long concluded that interview, and that their headline so far, Wilf. What else do you have to say?
Yeah, so SJ, good evening to you. Not long concluded it, but we actually started it some 5 or 6 hours ago, and in a totally unprecedented fashion. The interview was interrupted because President Trump beckoned Secretary Bessent to leave the Treasury building, walk across the path, the short walk to the White House, and join him in the Situation Room, where he remained for about 2 hours before returning to me to finish the interview. And here is a taste of what we discussed, not just about the situation in the Middle East, but specifically what he and the President and the other members in the Situation Room had been discussing moments earlier. Are you starting to think, if this does keep persisting as it is, that the Navy has to go into the Strait of Hormuz to help ships get through, which would have a big effect on...
Well, look, that was always in our planning, that there's the chance that U.S. Navy or perhaps an international coalition will be escorting oil tankers through. There are, in fact, tankers coming through now. Iranian tankers, I believe some Chinese flag tankers have come through. So we know that they have not mined the straits.
And was that what you were just discussing in the Situation Room?
We were discussing a plethora of things.
And is it your belief that the volume of ships going through the Strait of Hormuz will be improving immediately from now?
It is my belief that as soon as it is militarily possible, the U.S. Navy, and perhaps with an international coalition, will be escorting vessels through.
And that came up just now in the Situation Room?
Your words, not mine. But again...
Are we days away from that?
We've been planning for this. We've done scenario analysis for months, for weeks, leading into this. So,
but it's a prospect in the coming days, then.
It is a prospect as soon as we have complete control of the skies and are degrading their. They have no Air Force. The Navy is sunk, literally and figuratively, and the munitions factories, the rebuilding capabilities for the missiles, completely degraded. So as soon as it is possible for to ensure safe passage, we will do it.
Well, Wilf, extraordinary timing for your interview there, as you said, interrupted with the Treasury Secretary having to go to the Situation Room with the President and other members of this administration. But from what he was telling you there and the vibe that you got, what does this say about the pressure that the administration is under to get oil prices down?
Yeah, I think that's really the pertinent question, SJ, because clearly today was another day where oil prices surged up 10%. The stock market here in the US, which just closed, fell sharply as a result. And don't let's forget, it comes the day after the US and international partners made an announcement of a massive release from strategic oil reserves. That, of course, is an attempt to boost temporary supply. What I think this shows, on a day when that didn't immediately work, at least, to lower oil prices, is they're really seriously thinking about how to get long-term supplies back on track. And a couple of things to point out, which he said there. Two things explicitly. He said the Iranians have not mined the Straits of Hormuz. He says that ships are passing through, albeit clearly not that many. And there was a very strong implication there following his emergency meeting in the Situation Room with the President that the US Navy, possibly with coalition support, might begin to escort ships through the Straits of Hormuz. We'll see if that does indeed materialize, as he implied, in the coming days. But either way, I think it shows that they are really seriously thinking about how they can try and cap the impact on oil prices. What I'd just say alongside that is it didn't show, of course, across any of the 45-minute conversation, that they're trying the sort of opposite approach. Are they going to stand down from this military conflict? I didn't get that impression at all. They're just trying to work out ways to limit the economic impact of the ongoing conflict. On which note, I asked him, how much has this conflict cost the United States so far? He said $11 billion to date. I said, is there a number that would lead you to go and knock on the president's door and say, Mr. President, this is too much now, we can no longer afford it? He said, absolutely not. So while they want to limit the financial impact, the economic cost is not going to be a factor that stops them, based on the sentiment I got from the US Treasury Secretary exclusively today.
Wilfred, thank you. Wilfred Frost there in Washington. His interview there with Scott Bessent coming after the UK Defence Secretary said he too is considering plans to help defend the Strait of Hormuz. John Healey said the best way to reopen the strait would be to end the war, but added that the UK is looking at military options to protect ships from Iranian drones, mines and missiles.
We've seen the reports, haven't we, that the Iranians have started mining the straits. We've seen the reports overnight of more civilian commercial ships that have been attacked, unarmed, doing their normal business. This is a major escalation from Iran. It is a breach of international law. It's a very serious situation that is having an impact on oil prices and the cost of living for everyone. Now, I've already got pre-positioned in the region from before this conflict some autonomous mine hunting systems. And I've been talking to the planners today about additional options that we could bring to bear alongside allies if action is needed. But, you know, in the end, in the circumstances of conflict, it's very hard to demine any waters. And the best thing for reopening the straits, restarting the shipping, is a de-escalation of the conflict.
And you can see more of Wilf's exclusive interview with Scott Bessent on The World. It follows this programme at 9 o'clock tonight. Next, a mother of 10 who forced a vulnerable woman to work as a slave in her house for more than 25 years, today was sentenced to 13 years in prison. 56-year-old Amanda Wixon was found guilty of false imprisonment and forcing the woman to clean her squalid home in Tewkesbury, Gloucestershire. The victim, who has learning difficulties and is now in her mid-40s, had washing up liquid poured down her throat, bleach splashed on her face, and was made to live off scraps. Sky's West of England correspondent Dan Whitehead has this report.
And I got sufficient information from that incident to arrest you on suspicion of neglect. It's midnight on the 16th of March 2021. You're under arrest on suspicion of neglect.
This is the moment Amanda Wixon was taken in by police after holding a woman captive as her slave for 25 years.
She's quite what's the name for it, reclusive. Mm-hmm. She likes to, she writes things down that she wants.
Wixon took in the victim from a family she knew back in 1996. The girl was 16 at the time and had learning difficulties. We can only name the victim as Kay. What followed were 2 decades of physical and psychological abuse.
Our victim was totally dehumanised. I don't think Amanda Wixon saw her as being a human being. I've been in the police now nearly 29 years, and this is probably one of the worst cases I've seen. The pure longevity of the harm that's being caused throughout this time. Nearly 25 years of suffering and pain. This is one of the most horrific crimes that I've seen has been investigated by Gloucestershire.
The victim was forced to sleep in filthy conditions and fed only scraps of food. She was beaten if she didn't clean the house or look after one of Wixon's 10 children. As well as being locked up in squalid conditions in the house up the road, the abuse that the victim faced was horrific. Washing up liquid squirted down her throat, bleach thrown in her face, scars of which she still lives with today. The jury at Gloucester Crown Court heard how Wixon forcibly shaved the victim's hair and knocked out her teeth, causing painful abscesses. It was a tip-off from one of Wixon's sons that led police to the property in March 2021. After the victim was rescued, doctors said she was severely malnourished. She was taken in by a foster carer who today read out a letter written by the victim.
For 25 years, I lived in fear, control and abuse. I was treated as though my life, my freedom and my voice did not matter. Although my abuser has now been found guilty, the trauma and the nightmares are something I still carry with me every day.
You able to just show me bedroom?
Hey?
You able to show me where bedroom is?
Yeah, why?
Now in her 40s, the victim is beginning to rebuild her life. We're told she enjoys drawing and walks in the sunshine. Small pleasures that were denied by her abuser, who has shown no remorse and is now locked up herself, facing a 13-year jail sentence. Dan Whitehead, Sky News in Gloucester.
Well, it's an incredible and harrowing case. We're now joined by the head of UK counter-trafficking operations at Justice and Care, Debbie Lloyd. Debbie, a difficult story to watch and listen to. Just how unique is this kind of case?
This case is really disturbing. It shows how someone can be exploited and controlled for decades in plain sight. Situations like this remind us how modern slavery is just not something that happens abroad or, overseas. It happens here in the UK. And in the UK at the moment, there's an estimated 122,000 victims of exploitation of one type or another. But I think what's really important at the moment is we recognise how brave and how courageous this lady was, and for all victims to come forward. We need to ensure that they receive long-term support to help them rebuild their lives.
Yeah, I mean, this woman went into that house as a 16-year-old. She left. She was rescued as a woman in her 40s. She spent half her life in that house as a slave. You hand the perpetrator over to the criminal justice system and procedure and due process takes place. But it's not quite as straightforward for a survivor, especially a survivor like this woman.
Absolutely not. I mean, these types of crimes rely on control and coercion, that psychological control, as opposed to physical restraints that people often think about when you think about slavery. So victims can become isolated and they become dependent on the person that's exploiting them, or they can be fearful of the consequences of leaving. So actually that recovery process is really difficult, and they can be trapped for years in that cycle of that exploitation.
As you said, this is a unique case. It's an outlier, but modern slavery is not. You gave there the statistics of what is happening in the UK behind closed doors, out of sight, and in plain sight. Talk to me about how Justice and Care help discover these cases and support authorities.
Justice and Care run the Victim Navigator programme, and that sees independent navigators, as we call them, working alongside law enforcement to bridge that gap between identified victims of modern slavery and the criminal justice process. So the navigators will deploy with the policing teams when they go out on cases and really be that very first point of contact for victims, to provide that safety net and explain the sort of criminal justice process, which we can see in this case can take years. And it's to be able to support an individual to understand that complex process, but also to advocate for them, to make sure that all of their needs are being met throughout that journey. And what we find by having a navigator deployed alongside policing teams, but as I say, what's really important is that independence, is that there's around about between a 90 and 95% chance now with a navigator that you're going to have a victim walk that journey and actually give evidence in court to get the justice that they so rightly deserve.
Debbie, you're a former police officer, and this case that we're talking about started back in the 1990s when, you know, the concept of a navigator wasn't around. In fact, probably when you were a serving police officer, you know, that wasn't around either. How better educated are the authorities about human trafficking, and also the public as well? Because as I said, this can happen in plain sight as well as behind closed doors.
There's always room for improvement. I mean, since the 1990s, as you say, I mean, policing has massively improved their understanding of what exploitation looks like in all its different forms. I think the public, it's really difficult, but there are lots of signs that they can look out for, where someone could be fearful or withdrawn, restricted in their movements, somebody controlling them or speaking on their behalf. And sometimes I think it could just be that final piece of the jigsaw that a police investigation is looking for example, that a member of the public might see and think, oh, do you know, I don't know whether I should tell somebody. And my advice would always be, tell somebody.
Yeah, I mean, the discovery of this case came from a tip-off from one of the perpetrator's sons. This woman, not even seen by the neighbours in 25 years. You know, it was a tip-off from a son, but it is a powerful reminder of vigilance amongst the public for the signs that you've outlined there. And just in terms of concentrating on survivors, and this particular survivor, who is anonymous for well understood reasons, what is the outlook like for her? Because we heard Dan Whitehead, our correspondent there, saying that the court heard how she enjoys the simple pleasures now, drawing, taking walks in the sun. What is the long-term picture for a survivor of slavery and modern-day slavery?
Right support and the right care and love, really, people can make really positive recoveries. You know, we have to remember that this is a very long journey. Nothing's going to happen overnight. The impact of this type of exploitation can be profound. Survivors experience years of trauma and isolation, loss of independence. So simple things become a really big deal when you can achieve them. So as you say, you know, the fact that she can now take walks in the sun without feeling that well, without not being able to do that is just brilliant. And that's a start of probably what is going to be a long journey for her, but one that she's clearly being supported and able to achieve.
Well, Debbie, thank you so much for coming on to talk about this horrific case. You know, a woman held in a home for 25 years. She went as a 16-year-old girl, left as a woman in her 40s. That's Debbie Lloyd, head of UK counter-trafficking operations at Justice and Care, that does some fantastic work for survivors. Thank you. Some more breaking news from the United States now, and a man has been shot and killed after he rammed his vehicle into a synagogue in Michigan. The vehicle caught fire after crashing into the Temple Israel synagogue in West Bloomfield, a suburb of Detroit. Our US correspondent James Matthews has been following events and can bring us the latest. James.
Yeah, hi, Sarah-Jane. This synagogue, there's a preschool facility inside that building. What happened was the perpetrator rammed a truck through the doors and he sped down the hallway inside. Police describe him as travelling with purpose. He was shot at by on-site law enforcement, security guards inside, and that's what brought the suspect to a halt, subsequently found dead. A security guard was injured, but he was the only casualty other than the perpetrator. Something ignited in the vehicle and a fire broke out. There was black smoke billowing out of air vents in the building. Law enforcement, they had to use gas masks to get to the truck. They're investigating right now whether there were explosives inside that vehicle. So clearly, Sarah-Jane, it could have been much worse. This was a building with quite a number of people inside, young children among them. It isn't the only incident of violence, actually, that's taken place here today. One person is dead. 2 others were injured after a shooting inside an academic building at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. The person behind that was also killed. FBI Director Kash Patel has tweeted on X within the past few minutes saying that this is now being investigated as an act of terrorism.
Just stay there if you can. Donald Trump is speaking. We understand he has been making comments about what unfolded in Michigan earlier on today, but he's moved on to Iran. Let's have a listen in.
The situation with Iran is moving along very rapidly. It's doing very well. Our military is unsurpassed. There's never been anything like it. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. And we're doing what has to be done. Should have been done during a 47-year period. Could have been done by a lot of different people. They chose not to do it. But they really are a nation of terror and hate. And they're paying a big price right now. We're honored to be joined by many extraordinary ladies, working moms, and amazing women who are making history themselves. You really are. I want to thank
Speaking a short time earlier about Iran, he was asked about Michigan, James, at the start of that, and he said he had been fully briefed on the situation.
Yeah, he stayed across events in Michigan. And of course, one of the questions, Sarah-Jane, will be whether or not international events are having an impact domestically here in the United States. This was a targeted attack, apparently. It was a synagogue, this building. And the question will be asked, I mean, it's early days. Law enforcement are still on the scene. But the discussion will turn political. They will investigate the motivation behind this attack. And of course, that may lead to questions. Is American involvement jointly with Israel in the Middle East having an impact at home? Is it motivating those who would bring harm to Jewish communities? Bearing in mind there has been a significant rise in anti-Semitic violence here in the United States since the October 7th attacks.
James, thank you. James Matthews in Washington for us tonight. Still to come here on the programme. A 60-year-old Brit has been detained in Dubai for allegedly filming Iranian missiles over the city. We'll have the details. And as MPs vote to reject a ban on social media for under-16s, the campaigning families are urging the Prime Minister to take a firm position on the issue. Plus, we'll hear from superstar DJ Pete Tong about his struggles with hearing loss. The Conservatives have called for an inquiry into the release of the Mandelson files, claiming key details are being withheld from the Commons and accusing the Prime Minister of making misleading statements to the House. Well, Sir Keir Starmer has come under increasing pressure over the appointment of Mandelson as ambassador to the US, and he repeated his apology today.
I made a mistake in appointing Peter Mandelson, and let me follow that up swiftly, as I've done before, but I need to do it again, with an apology to the victims of Epstein for appointing Peter Mandelson. It was my mistake, and I take responsibility in relation to it. The release of the information shows what was known. That led to further questions being asked. Unfortunately, because of the Metropolitan Police investigation, we can't release that information yet.
So this rumbles on into day 2 of who knows how many. Our chief political correspondent, John Craig, joins us now. So what is coming next?
Well, the next thing, of course, it will be the second tranche of documents. I can tell you that the Intelligence and Security Committee, that's the top committee of senior MPs and peers, which was given the task of vetting all this material, met again today. Now, if they've completed their deliberations, that suggests we might get some more next week. But the big development tonight, Sarah-Jane, is, in fact, this letter from Alex Burghardt. Now, he is the Shadow Secretary of State for the Cabinet Office, and he's basically Kemi Badenoch's chief attack dog, certainly on this particular issue. He's written to Sir Laurie Magnus. Now, he is the city grandee, who is the Prime Minister's ethics advisor, and he's making 2 claims. One, that the Prime Minister misled the House. He says the documents that have been published are irreconcilable with statements made by the PM December last year and February this year, the day of that humble address debate. Secondly, the government has manifestly failed to comply in full with the terms of the humble address. In other words, left big gaps. Now, you heard the PM say there, oh, that's because of the police. Just on the misleading the House charge, he says, in September last year, he said, the Prime Minister said, full due process was followed, as it did with all ambassadors. Well, that's not what the documents say, of course. And on February the 4th, we went through a process. There was a due diligence exercise. Well, that's being challenged by the Conservatives as well. Here is Kemi Badenoch speaking today about this.
In any normal circumstances, the Prime Minister would be resigning. He's been shown to have lied to the Commons. He told everyone that he did not know the full extent of Peter Mandelson's relationship with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. And now we can see from the release of these files that that is not true. It is a shame that there are not enough opposition MPs to remove the Prime Minister. Labour MPs now need to consider their position and ask themselves, in good conscience, should this man be running our country?
Well, it's not just the Conservatives who believe that the Prime Minister has some questions to answer. Here's Harriet Harman, the former Labour deputy leader, now a Labour peer, of course, speaking to Beth Rigby on Sky News' Electoral Dysfunction podcast, and saying that the opposition are bound to take this measure, make this move.
Peter Mandelson had been sacked twice before by a Labour government, and therefore why on earth would you have any trust in somebody whose actions had already required them to be fired twice? So I think that the Prime Minister has acknowledged his mistake, but the question at issue now is how big of a mistake was it? Well, I'm sure the opposition will be looking at the documents to see whether or not there's absolute consistency between what the Prime Minister said to the House of Commons and what's in the documents, because if there's not, then it will raise the issue of misleading the House.
Well, the Prime Minister's spokesman today said, I refute the suggestion of a cover-up. The government has complied fully. I don't accept that's the case at all. the question, the comments which Keir Starmer would have put on the box notes, they're the things that the opposition say are missing. Those are the cover notes where you explain what's happened. They're missing. That's what Kemi Badenoch said, but the opposition said no. The government says no, that is not the case. And the Prime Minister, as we've heard, is saying, well, we're constrained by the police investigation. But this one, you say it's rumbling on, Sarah-Jane. It's got a long way to go yet.
OK, thanks, John. Now, a 60-year-old British tourist has reportedly been charged under cybercrime laws in Dubai. This is after he allegedly filmed Iranian missiles over the city. Sky's Olivia Guthrie joins me now for more. So, Olivia, what do we know? Because, you know, there are a lot of tourists in Dubai, and when a missile goes past, the natural reaction for many people, apart from to run, is now to get out your phone these days. So what's gone on?
Absolutely. Well, this British man is among 21 people who have been charged with breaking the UAE's cyber crime laws. That's according to a campaign group called Detained in Dubai. Now, this 60-year-old Londoner is allegedly, he got out his phone and he filmed an Iranian attack on his phone. He's apparently said to have immediately deleted the content and to have told the authorities that he meant no harm. But he was arrested and he has now been charged. Now, he hasn't been named yet, but we understand that he faces up to 2 years in jail, a £50,000 fine and deportation. Detained in Dubai say that this is just how the law goes in the UAE.
The issue is, it's not just illegal to take the photograph and share it and post it on social media. It's illegal to have it on your phone in the first place. It's illegal to send it to your spouse or your friend and have those conversations. It's illegal to share a news article that's negative against the UAE government. The UAE cybercrime laws essentially criminalise almost anyone who's on social media. They may have unintentionally violated them, and they're subject to arrest.
Well, there have been an awful lot of opportunities for British tourists to get this wrong.
Yeah.
Since the conflict began, the UAE's Defence Ministry's X account says that there have been 268 Iranian ballistic missiles, 15 cruise missiles and 1,514 drone attacks. Now, posting, sharing or commenting on footage of these attacks on social media is illegal in the UAE because, they say, it may incite public opinion or disturb public security. Now, the Foreign Office say that they are in touch with the local authorities in Dubai about this British man who has been charged and is being held there.
Olivia, thank you. Olivia Guthrie, the latest on that story. So to come on the UK tonight as MPs vote to reject a ban on social media for under-16s. The campaigning families are urging the Prime Minister to take a firm position on the issue. And we'll hear from superstar DJ Pete Tong, who's opening up about his hearing loss. Now to a story that you may have missed this week. There has been a lot going on. But earlier on this week, MPs voted against a ban on social media for under-16s. The House of Lords has backed a ban, but it was rejected by the Commons on Monday, with the Education Minister, Olivia Bailey, instead calling for more flexible restrictions. The Prime Minister himself didn't vote, and now a group of bereaved parents have written to him to ask him to make his position on this issue clear. Well, one of them is Ellen Room, who joins me now. You'll know Ellen's story. Her son, Joel, died in an online challenge gone wrong back in 2022. Ellen, really good to see you again. Thank you for coming in on this most important of issue. I mean, there have been so many headlines about banning social media, and I didn't want this one to go under the radar because MPs voted against it on Monday. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's so infuriating because I think 75% of adults in the UK want a ban. And yet MPs are being forced to go down the route of a consultation and considering options that we have talked time and time again about the harms of social media. And it just seems like it's delaying it longer than it needs to be.
It doesn't mean that it's done and dusted. It doesn't mean that a ban won't come in. What we're hearing from MPs is actually, you mentioned the consultation there because, you know, that has been launched. It doesn't end until the end of May. And the results of that, they say, will shape this law, a ban and perhaps other wider-reaching safety measures. What's your response to that argument?
Well, some of the measures they're talking about are ridiculous, like a curfew. So we're set at, what, 8 o'clock? So, you know, you can be harmed in the daytime up until 8 o'clock, and after 8 o'clock you won't look at any harms. I mean, that's not going to stop them seeing the harms that are there. It's not going to stop being on Snapchat and being followed by predators or things. Some of these features on these platforms are still there. Whether or not you put a curfew on these things, it just seems ridiculous.
The counter-argument has come from perhaps some surprising sources, actually. Ian Russell, the father of Molly Russell, and children's charities are saying, look, an outright ban isn't the answer because it could push children into darker corners of the internet. And also, it would exclude vulnerable children who, you know, use social media for good and to main contact. But in a nutshell, why do you think a ban is essential, an outright ban for anyone under 16 from going on a social media platform?
I think we have talked and talked and talked about it, and I don't think it will push people into darker areas of the web. I mean, there's the dark web. I was talking to 2 police officers today, and I was saying, well, I don't know how to get onto the dark web as an adult, let alone as a child. And then he was saying, actually, even if you got onto the dark web, you've actually got to know your way around it. It isn't like a search engine there. So the fact to say children could end up there, I don't think so. And then if they're on platforms that are not regulated, we need to look at the features of these platforms and say, well, if there's the facility to follow a child online, well, maybe these platforms need to look at removing those platforms that have those features. So I think hopefully Lord Nash will bring out some amendments. Let's see what he brings out next week, which I'm working with, to see whether the revised amendments will make a difference in the next round. We got to go at round 2. I think it's the 25th of March.
You and other parents wrote to the Prime Minister after that vote, asking for him to clarify his position, because up until now he has said he is open to the idea of a ban. But he has teenagers in his household. I'm sure this topic will have come up as a discussion, as it has done in every home that has children of that age in it. You want him to come out and say what he thinks. Why is that so important to you?
I think he comes from a very privileged background, doesn't he? You've got children that are educated, families that are educated. When you're dealing with a whole range of people across the whole of the UK, you've got families from very deprived backgrounds that perhaps may not be aware of the harms. And even if, whether it's deprived or whatever background, I was speaking to somebody else the other day.
Parents who think it will never happen to them.
Oh, of course, it will never happen to them, yeah. Well, I was also very naive, and I think actually talking to the parents that have lost children, we openly say, I wasn't aware of these harms. Back in 2020, when Jules was using social media more during lockdown, being an only child, I thought they were silly dance things, just as I think I was at the government that came out and said that, well, we want children to be able to do silly dance routines. We want to put children on these platforms so that they can do silly dance routines that strange predators can follow online. I just don't understand the mindset. I think take it away, and it may not be perfect, and some children may find a way around it. But on the whole, you're actually going to have a majority of children taken off those platforms. And just as we do with drinking, driving, cigarettes, they're all age restricted. And this is just one of those areas that needs to be age restricted. It's not suitable for younger children.
And I can't think of a more powerful argument for that than your story, than Jules' story. And I'm going to approach this question with sensitivity, and I hope you can trust me to do that. I was thinking of you earlier this week because it is Mother's Day this weekend, and I was thinking of all the other bereaved families who, you know, whose children are not here. And, you know, you may say Mother's Day is a marketing gimmick or something, but, you know, it does mean something to parents. And I can't think of a more powerful argument for a ban than how you'll be feeling on Sunday.
Yeah, but it's not just Sunday. You have difficult days throughout the year. And today is Mariana Janin's 5th anniversary for his daughter's death. Yesterday would have been Archie Battersby's 16th birthday. I can name so many different parents that have all these different dates. And yes, Mother's Day is a day that I'll never be a mother, I'll never be a grandmother, and I don't have other children, and I'm not campaigning for some sort of criteria for my other children. I don't have any other children. I purely do this to make a difference for everybody else's children. And I'm so passionate about it, as are the other 22 parents that wrote to the Prime Minister, that we just desperately don't want anybody else to be in our position. The loss of a child is truly horrific. And then when you actually come to it, it's way worse. And it doesn't end on the death of your child. The anniversaries, the Mother's Days, the Christmas, the birthdays, it's relentless. It's hard.
Well, Ellen, as ever, thank you for coming in to talk to us about this. And it is by no means done yet, and neither are you, so I know we're going to keep talking. Thank you, Ellen Rim there.
Thank you.
Well, a government spokesperson has told us this. This is a complex issue with no single right answer. That's why we have launched a consultation looking at everything from age limits and safer design features to a social media ban to seek views from experts, parents and young people to ensure we take the best approach based on the latest evidence. Well, as I said, more on that to come. We will follow the progress on a potential ban for social media with under 16s. Now, to a man who has provided the soundtrack to dance fans' Friday nights for 35 years. Pete Tong is one of the biggest DJs in the world, but 10 years ago, he was diagnosed with hearing loss in his right ear. And the latest chapter in Pete's long and varied career sees him raising awareness of what is an occupational hazard for DJs and ravers alike. I've been speaking to him about his diagnosis, which has seen life imitate art.
When I was a teenager at school, you know, drummer in a band, became a DJ very young, and then, yeah, for decades, exposed to loud music or living in loud music. I mean, in some ways, audiologists say to me they're surprised my hearing's as good as it is.
Yeah, yeah.
And then obviously, famously, I did get involved in making a film about 20 years ago about a DJ that went deaf. And the funny thing was, the reason that happened is because the director-writer, we sent him to Ibiza for a few months to do research, and he came back and he said, "Oh, I've got an idea. I'm going to make the DJ deaf because I'm surprised you guys have got any hearing left at all." So, yeah.
Yeah, the film you reference is all gone Pete Tong. Yeah. We've all seen that one. That's kind of catchphrase. I'm sure you can hear people shouting that at you in the street.
I can hear that, yeah.
Did you put it off getting a hearing test and getting it looked at? Because there can be a stigma with hearing loss and wearing any kind of supportive aids. And, of course, particularly doing what you do, I wonder if you saw that as a bit of a barrier in the beginning.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I put it off. It was more a kind of lack of awareness of, you know, the fact that there were hearing tests. You know, I think you walk down a high street, you see an optician, but you never see somewhere to get your hearing tested. And my kind of history of getting medical checkups and stuff like that, which I've been pretty good at, it's never really been talked about. You know, the doctor would put something in your ear, look in your ear for wax or something. But no, so I guess I became aware of hearing tests, obviously, eventually. In terms of stigma, I don't think there's any stigma about getting your hearing checked. It's more a lack of awareness of the need to do it or the desire to do it. I think there's a statistic that says anyone with a hearing issue puts, you know, the average time it takes them to get to a hearing test is like 10 years, which is staggering. And as regards any kind of hearing aid, I think that's the good news. I think more recently now, like you walk anywhere in the world and people have got things stuck in their ears. So I think the idea of you know, hearing aids is much less of a stigma than it would have been 20 years ago. So and also they've got Bluetooth now. You play music through them, all sorts of things. They do all the things that you know, all the other things you stick in your ear do.
Yeah, the technology is so advanced now.
Exactly.
What is it you're doing to activate this campaign, to grow awareness?
Working with Boots Hearing Care to encourage people to get their hearing tested and make them aware of what they can do in terms of hearing protection. And then we're putting together the largest ever hearing test, apparently, like there's ever been done to live music, in central London. And I've prepared a special track that has all these kind of faults in it in terms of frequencies missing or noise to kind of replicate what it would be like if you had tinnitus, which is a very common ailment for DJs. So thankfully I don't have. But
Yeah. So, I mean, this will be the one occasion where you play a bad set, right, to see.
Well, you're actually trying to make a song sound bad to get people to recognise that they might have issues. Yeah.
But clubbers as well, they tend to wear earplugs, don't they? Because I know if you go to a club, if you meet someone, front left is always by the speaker. And I think that's something that needs to be spoken about.
Well, that's the other part of this whole thing around World Hearing Day is very much promoting the protection of hearing as well. I mean, I think it's out there. You know, some people are good with it. Some festivals you go to, you get a little foam earplugs. You know, weirdly enough, on an airline, like religiously, they always give you earplugs, even though they're not playing your music or not very good music. But so I think it's getting better. It's just that whole part could get more sophisticated and much more common. But I think, it's raising people's awareness that actually standing in a club for 10 hours, week in, week out for years, you're going to suffer some damage. It's inevitable.
Some of the work you do now with Ibiza Classics, I mean, you're playing some incredible venues, whether it be the Royal Albert Hall, castles across the UK and beyond. Can you talk to me about this phase of your career? Because, as I said, you know, you've been a radio DJ for over 35 years on Radio 1, the longest-serving DJ there now. You've travelled the world. And this particular phase of your career, as somebody who used to go clubbing in the 90s, and one of my favourite mixes you did was the Ministry of Sound Annual 2 with Boy George. That's still part of the soundtrack to my life now. So for you to have moved on this phase and taken people like me, my age group, with you, what's that been like?
Yeah, it's been amazing. It was... We call you relapse ravers. I think the...
I'll take that.
No, it all spun out of that first show that we did at the Royal Albert Hall for the proms. It was, you know, such a fun thing to do. Met Jules Buckley and we worked on that show for months and we did that show. But it was actually during that show that night that, you know, just a kind of light bulb switched on that this could be something really, really special. And we kind of discovered that at that stage it was almost discovering a new audience. And you know, because the people that lived with that music through the late 80s, 90s, into the early noughties, even if they got older or they stopped going to clubs as much or, you know, and they didn't want to stay up till 6 or 7 in the morning, they never stopped loving the music. So,
you still listen to it on the school run, Pete.
So I think Ibiza Classics was a brilliant way of just reconnecting everyone with the music in an environment that finishes at kind of before midnight or 11 o'clock.
Let's just come here on the UK tonight. Action from the Europa League, where England forward Ollie Watkins' stunning header gave Aston Villa a big advantage at Lyon.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Welcome to the world.
Come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? This is the war game.
There were a number of armed security.
We want to discover, to find out what's really going on.
Everything you need to know about British politics in about 20 minutes. I actually don't like political drama.
So, where next?
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm James Matthews and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Do you fear a fourth indictment? Does your government owe an apology to the British home children?
Great to see you.
Does your government owe them an apology? The fact that they were intercepted, does that indicate a military weakness on the part of Iran?
No.
Free, wherever you get your news. There's no doubting the strength of this hurricane as it roars through. You can feel a devastating power. It had been a difficult night in a deadly storm.
bang, bang. You can hear it hitting the windows.
Our houses are okay.
It's depressing.
As bad as all of this is, it could have been much worse. Today, this land they call sacred is at the heart of America's electric car revolution.
To me, it's a sacred ground.
The white gold rush is a race that Biden doesn't want to lose. I've covered some of the biggest stories in the world. Donald Trump, 45th President of the United States, it would appear is about to learn his fate.
Escort coming out!
San Quentin houses America's largest death row. They rarely allow cameras onto the condemned block.
James Matthews, Sky News. I want to be treated equally like everyone else.
It's one step closer to getting out, to getting off death row.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
Are you diminished by claims that you're a racist?
Question?
Mr. Musk, has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives? Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding. What do you call him, sir?
He's from Sky News. He's from Sky News. He's entitled to ask me questions.
Hello, welcome back. Jess is here with the sport. And if you were tuning in last night, we were talking about how disastrous Tottenham were, domestically and abroad, actually. Well, it's been no better for any other English side in the Champions League, has it this week, which I suppose is some good news for Tottenham fans. Yeah. They're not the only ones that aren't having a great time.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a humbling experience for the Premier League teams in the Champions League over the last couple of nights. And it's in contrast because there was so much hype and excitement after the league phase because on the whole, the English teams performed really well, particularly Arsenal, who won all 8 of their league phase games, topped the table, no less. And I suppose people just assumed that that would carry on into the knockout stages. But as we've seen over the last couple of nights, that has really not been the case because not one single English team won the first leg of their knockout ties over the last couple of days. And if you look at the teams like Spurs, who you've mentioned, I hate to say it to you again, SJ, but City as well, Chelsea, all have 3-goal deficits to try and overturn. And they're against some really experienced, high-quality European opposition. So it's going to be very tough, even if that second leg is at home.
But we love a comeback.
It's possible, isn't it? Probably more possible for a team like Liverpool, who only lost 1-0, so there's just that 1-goal deficit for them to overturn. They'll be at home for the second leg. Arsenal, Newcastle drew, so big opportunities for them to get through to the quarterfinals there.
Well, still plenty to play for. We'll see.
Exactly. So not a great couple of nights in the Champions League for Premier League teams, but there are some Premier League teams in action in the Europa League and Conference League tonight. I'll update you on how they get on in just a couple of minutes.
Adding a continental touch to Arsenal's never say die style is what Wenger is promising.
Quand je suis venu, je veux dire, il y a tout ce qu'il faut pour être un grand club. Je veux dire, ils ont un public qui est fabuleux. Je veux dire, il y a des terrains où on peut s'entraîner. Il y a un entourage qui est très bien. Je veux dire, ils ont des très bonnes structures.
I think it was a big chance for Arsenal to take this player because I believe he has a great future.
He knew he had to get those kind of players that will know his philosophy and will help him implement that philosophy on the pitch at Arsenal. If you want to change the mentality at Arsenal, you don't go and sign English players.
It didn't have as big an effect as when we signed Dennis Bergkamp. That was like a massive statement. When Patrick signed, these are players that nobody's really heard of.
I was happy to have the chance to sign him. And overall, Patrick Vieira landed at Arsenal, but nobody knew that I was the manager. So at the start, he didn't play.
So actually Remy Gard came in at the same time. Remy was an accomplished player, but also I think to give Patrick comfort that he wasn't alone, he wasn't the only French guy.
Right, let's take a look at the weather before we go.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
Well, the next few days are going to be colder than recently. Stiff winds bringing widespread and often heavy showers or longer spells of rain and hill snow. It's going to be particularly windy this evening, especially for the south. Prolonged rain moving through northern England and Wales into central and southwestern England. Elsewhere, northern and western parts will have blustery, wintry showers, while southeastern England looks mostly dry. Northern and western parts will see further showers tonight, prolonged over parts of Ireland. Elsewhere, England and Wales will see locally heavy rain clearing across the southeast with a few showers following. It's going to be cold and windy with a frost over northern hills. Taking a look at tomorrow morning, Friday, there'll be sunny spells and heavy blustery showers, wintry on the hills. They'll be concentrated in the north and the west, quite isolated in the southeast. It is going to be windy, although less windy than today. Temperatures widely below average. The afternoon will bring a few showers, pushing across the southeast. Otherwise, you can expect little change. Saturday looking drier and not as windy.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, that's all from the UK tonight. Up next, it is The World with Jonathan Samuels. I'll see you Monday.